Down here!
Excuse me, were you talking to me?
Ah! Ow! My ears!
I'm sorry.
Ah! Oh my god! Ah!
Are you okay?
He's dead.
Wasn't expecting to be covering this game so soon, but then again I wasn't expecting the sequel to be coming out so soon. Better now than never to revisit an old cult classic that I didn't even know was a cult classic until I got on the internet. Had this on the original Xbox back in the day and thought it was decent, but I would be lying if I said that this game clicked with me. Let's see, 2005? Yeah, no. Halo 2 was my crack at the time. For those that don't know, Psychonauts is the zany platformer developed by Double Fine Productions, the game studio founded by the madman known as Tim Shafer, who's behind other cult classics such as Grim Fandango, The Secret of Monkey Island, and much more. This was Shafer's first game without the big bucks of LucasArts behind him, and while it doesn't show, I bet he wanted some of those bags after this game was released since it didn't sell so well. If you've read any article or watched any video on gaming commercial failures, then you probably know the tale of this game. 4.5 years of development hell. We're talking about team infighting, a lack of experience, publishers wanting to change shit, publishers bailing, pretty much the whole 9 yards of disastrous video game development. All this for it to underperform in the market too. If there was a couple bright spots is that this game was eventually released and well received amongst the few people that copped it. So much so that the game was looked back upon as not only one of the most unique games of that era, but of all time. Does it live up to this silent acclaim a decade and a half later? Well, let's get into it.
They may come for me, Dogen, but they'll be looking for Raz, the boy. What they're going to find, what they don't expect, is Raz, the Psychonaut.
And then you'll make their heads explode?
No. Do you do that?
No. Well, once kinda.
So you play as a kid named Razputin, a runaway circus performer who has aspirations of becoming a psychonaut. What the heck is a psychonaut? Well, they're pretty much spies but with weird psychokinesis powers. So think James Bond but with the powers of Psyche K but not as OP. Raz runs away to a summer camp called Whispering Rock that's designed to train these abilities out of kids like him, but he's not really welcomed at first since he doesn't really have parental permission. The teachers let him stay until his parents arrive, but forbid him from participating in any activities. Well, at least the activities that they don't want him to do, since you do go into the minds of the 3 teachers and participate in there, but I digress. Eventually, Raz finds out that some strange shit's been going on around the camp when he has a vision of a crazy doctor named Lobato extracting the minds of kids. Shit gets personal when Raz's soon-to-be girlfriend Lily gets abducted, and for the rest of the game, he works with Agent Cruller to not only get his love interest back, but also find out what the hell's been going on. So this game still looks pretty damn good if you ask me. That was usually the case for games of this era that went the cartoony route with their art style. But unlike a lot of other cartoony looking games where they're usually very colorful and welcoming, Psychonauts is off-putting and downright surreal at times. It avoids the usual fire, ice, and forest levels and platformers, but instead opts for these absurdist dreamlike levels. Makes sense since you're literally hopping into the minds of some pretty crazy people. Almost everybody in this game is unhinged to some degree, and the looks of them reflect that. Exaggerated proportions with smooth but kinda twitchy animation. Scott Campbell's art style is definitely distinct, and I like that every character has their own weird look to them. One thing I also really like about this game is that there's not too much of a dip in quality from the cinematics to the in-game cutscenes. You know how in a game like Kingdom Hearts, a cutscene conversation will be all smooth and detailed, but then that conversation continues in-game and everyone has that stupid derpy face? Yeah, this thankfully doesn't do that. The animations are almost always on point. The voice acting is also really top-notch. Of course, Richard Horvitz has that distinct voice that brings life to any character he plays. His performance as Raz is great, but I can't help but hear 3 other characters whenever he talks.
Jeez, it sounds like you caught a bad cold.
Maybe. But listen! I traced the psychic interference back to Coach Oleander's radio. He's been broadcasting his insane plot all over camp in his sleep.
So he's really kidnapping children and stealing their brains to make weapons.
Yes! Isn't that great?
What? How is that great?
Unfortunately, you can tell at times that this game went through a rough development because Christ, there's more bugs in this game than fucking Hollow Knight. My heart dropped every time the game wanted me to climb these ropes because it was a toss-up if Raz would grab the shit or not. Same deal with grabbing onto ledges. Sometimes Raz remembers he has hands and latches on, and other times he doesn't. This is even getting to all the times that my guy randomly got stuck in the environment. And look at this cutscene of Raz talking to several people with his back turned. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to happen. It's a shame too, since this cutscene is actually pretty funny.
Ew! What's that smell?
That smells like fear, boy.
Yeah, no, I mean that fart smell.
That's fear.
No, I'm talking about an actual smell. It's like if stink bombs laid eggs and then those went bad.
That's sulfur. It's part of the dragon costume, kid.
Point is, bugs are annoying, they're all over this game, and they shouldn't be.
Ford said that I can use this machine to turn pine needles into delicious taffy.
I said it turns mental cobwebs into psychons.
Just testing your hearing.
But you gotta buy a cobweb duster at the camp store first.
Yeah.
Ah, don't you yeah me.
Man, he's like a little bat.
Bat your head in, punk.
So Psychonauts is a platformer, but don't get it twisted. There's a lot more exploring and talking to people than there is jumping on platforms, to the point where there's an argument that this game should have been a point-and-click adventure game like Shafer's other works, instead of what it is now. I don't entirely agree with this, since I did find some of these stages pretty satisfying to traverse, but in other cases I do understand where these people are coming from. The small amount of platforming there is kind of generic. Double jumping over pits, sliding on rails, swinging on handles. It's satisfactory, but there's just nothing here with these parts that haven't been done better in other games. It also doesn't help that the controls are a bit on the stiff side. You're definitely not going to be zipping around the place like Mario and Sunshine. Luckily, most of the stages are built around utilizing Raz's psychic powers instead. The kid's got quite the toolset of powers to mess around with, from pyromancy to levitation to telekinesis. You slowly unlock these abilities throughout the game with certain plot events, and they're used to explore and fight off these sensor guys. Mostly to explore though, and figure out minor puzzles, since you have psychic karate that lays the smackdown on these guys a lot quicker. At least for me, I only really utilized the psychic abilities in combat when it came to these roided up sensors and boss battles. The psychic abilities were a lot more fun and practical when used as utility, which is thankfully where the focus is. Using invisibility to sneak past people, psychokinesis to burn down obstacles, clairvoyance to see things as someone else. The last one was definitely my favorite ability to use. Always got a kick at seeing how other characters see you. The game does a pretty good job at challenging your use of all these abilities too, but what really makes this game memorable is the big brain level design. Man, they went all in with the possibilities of what the human mind can come up with, because these are some of the most creative levels in a non-Mario platformer. Actually, maybe even including Mario, since this game actually did the gravitational platform thing a full 2 years prior to Galaxy. This game just has some out-of-the-box levels that I really enjoy. That underwater level where you have to control Raz through the point of view of the boss. Lungfishopolis where it goes all War of the Monsters for a second. Waterloo World where you're essentially playing Civilization but on the board itself. Black Velvetopia with its cool Mexican-y color patterns and luchador fights. And of course, how could I forget about the weird psychosis that was the Milkman conspiracy. If there was any level in this game that felt like a fever dream, it was definitely this one.
I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.
So you hop inside the mind of a former security guard named Boyd, who's obsessed with conspiracy theories to an unhealthy degree. You spawn inside a house and you find Boyd mumbling some nonsense to a bunch of pictures, and you think, well, okay, this is weird, but nothing too crazy. That's until you step outside to this twisted 1950s suburbia with these upside down roads. Man, you feel the paranoia and uneasiness of Boyd in this level. You got all these cameras and people watching you, these little girls that think you're a creep.
Hello, sir. I am a rainbow squirt. Would you like to buy a box of my delicious rainbow treats?
I would buy some cookies, but I don't have any milk. Do you have any idea where I could buy some milk for my cookies?
Ah! Creepy man!
these Steve Bloom voiced robot agents that are trying to act like regular people but are clearly doing a bad job. The dialogue that these guys spout is hilarious.
Someday, the popularity of mobile phones will make my job obsolete. This job is unsavory, but it must be performed by someone. Though I often smell of excrement, I deserve your respect because I provide a valuable service. Feces.
I swear this whole section of this game should be meme fuel, and the only reason it isn't is because this game isn't mainstream. Gameplay wise, it's a pretty dope stage in that you have to blend in with whatever these guys are doing in order to get into certain areas. Everyone, including yourself, is in search of this elusive milkman, and if you try to stroll into an area undisguised, you get interrogated to all hell about that guy.
What is the mission of the milkman? Who is the milkman? Are you, or have you ever been, a member of the Rainbow Squirts?
The reason this level is so dope is because it plays into this game's strengths. The writing is incredibly amusing, you utilize all of your psychic abilities, the visuals are weird, and there's simply no other stage in gaming that explored something like this. Anyway, I've gone too long about this one part. The point is that it's a highlight of this game, and there's plenty of video essays that go more in depth about it than I do. If there's one drawback to this level and the other ones that I listed earlier, is that they're all crammed together in the middle part of this game. Now this may not sound like an issue since you get banger stages back to back, but that's only when you're waist deep into the game. The beginning of this game is really slow, which is unusual for a platformer where they usually showcase their best mechanics right away. There's way too many linear levels that do more explaining than engaging. Hell, the first 3 mines you go into are practically tutorial levels with how often the teachers explain things to you. That's too many. I was afraid that I wasn't gonna like this game just like my younger self, but thankfully my current self has more patience to push through to the good parts. There's that, and I have more appreciation of the weird characters that populate this camp. In the beginning I spent way more time than necessary simply talking to the other kids in the camp, but with conversations like these, can you really blame me?
You know, a nutcracker might be faster.
Tonight, when this baby is full of fine ladies, I'm going to see everything.
How are you gonna fill that nut with ladies?
No, dude. The girl's cabin. I've got a man on the inside.
I get it. You're using clairvoyance. You grabbed one of the squirrel's nuts, and now you're using clairvoyance on it to form a mental link and see what the squirrel sees.
Could you say acorns instead of nuts if you repeat that to anybody else?
Coincidentally, the game doesn't really get that good until the plot picks up, which is about a third of the way in. Kinda got the wrong impression that this game was going to be a Banjo-Kazooie style collectathon with all these figments and psy cards everywhere. They're used to upgrade your psychic powers, which is pretty dope, but this is something I totally forgot about until the last level. It just wasn't needed. Your baseline powers already do more than enough. Still, I wouldn't really wish these out the game since my lizard brain can't help but collect shit. I do wish that this game was more clear on what the hell you had to do sometimes. Was anybody else stumped when they reached the asylum? All of a sudden you really have to use this psycho portal to hop into people's minds even though it's not something you've been conditioned to using beforehand. If it wasn't for Agent Crawler, I would have had to look up a walkthrough multiple times. I know he got tired of my ass because I asked him for advice a handful of times throughout the second half of this game. Mostly when it came to bosses because sometimes you can't karate chop your way through and the way to beat them is not that clear.
People are missing, kids' brains have been stolen, Coach Oleander's trying to take over the world. Won't you help?
Well, yes, the world's a crazy place, son, but don't worry. The canoes are safe.
So Raz eventually arrives at the asylum where Lily and the other Psychonauts are held captive, but he can't get up to the top to free them since this fucking guy's blocking the elevator. He'll only let Dr. Lobato up, but thankfully he's blind as hell, so Raz is able to put together a convincing enough Lobato disguise that lets him through. This is only after helping the patients with their mental issues though. Raz reaches the top and manages to free his comrades while restoring their minds. The patients, no longer crazy as hell, decide to burn down the asylum, but not before Coach Oleander gets confronted for all the shit he's done. Yeah, this Humpty Dumpty head ass was behind everything. He recruited Dr. Lobato to harvest the camp's brains so that he could build an army of psychic tanks. Agent Cruller arrives and gives a powder that causes him to sneeze his brain out, but as the asylum burns down, he manages to transfer his brain into one of these psychic tanks. He takes out the other Psychonauts and has a 1v1 against Raz where he loses. Unfortunately, Raz breathes in some of that powder that causes him to sneeze his brain out, but quickly launches his brain inside the tank, merging it with Oleander's. Raz learns that the reason Oleander's such a dick is because of his abusive butcher father. Raz tries to deal with him, but a twisted version of his own dad shows up, which he has to confront as well. There's a lot of baggage in that relationship that I don't have time to get into. Just know that the dad hates psychics because they curse the whole family, and Raz is becoming one, which is not okay to him. Except it actually is okay since the real dad comes and is revealed to be a psychic himself. The dad gives Raz a temporary power up to where he finally lays the smackdown on both Oleander and his own personal demons. With everything back to normal and the camp closing down, Raz is offered by Cruller to finally become a Psychonaut, to which Raz proudly accepts. The happy ending is cut short though when it's reported that the Grand Master of the Psychonauts has been kidnapped. The crew fly off for this new mission, which I guess will happen in the sequel. So this game has big brain level design and a unique look to it, but the third and most memorable thing about this game is the witty dialogue, or more specifically the character writing. One thing that keeps you going in this game, even despite some questionable design choices or all the weird but amusing characters. There's a surprising amount of depth to them, mostly the ones whose minds you go into. Obviously you get a first glance at how these people view the world, but you also get even more of their backstory with these memory vaults that you can find in their worlds. They're basically little slideshows on the character's past, and the reason they're dope is because they tell you a lot about a character in a very short time. Always like it when games can flesh out their worlds without ripping away control for the player for extended periods of time. This isn't to say that Psychonauts doesn't do this from time to time, as there are some lengthy conversations and cutscenes, but they never felt lengthy since this game has a pretty good sense of humor. A lot of the jokes are targeted towards a younger audience, but there's definitely some stuff in here that could be appreciated by adults. I mean, this game doesn't have a T rating for nothing.
Let's go, go, go!
What kind of obstacle course is this? That kid just got killed.
A mental obstacle course, you bleeding heart. He's not dead. His astral projection just got kicked out of my mind. And I'll kick your astral projection out of here too if you don't get moving right now.
Honestly, the whole vibe of this game is like something that would have been on Nicktoons back in the mid-2000s. Actually, I take that back. Maybe more Cartoon Network, since the art style and sense of humor might have been a little bit too macabre for Nicktoons at the time. Either way, there were a lot of moments in this game that did get a chuckle out of me.
Hi, is this big soldier bugging you?
Yes?
Well, why don't you come out here and fight him?
What's the pay?
Freedom?
Forget it.
So yeah, that's Psychonauts. I'm glad that I finally decided to revisit this because this game is still a bop, one of the most memorable platformers I've played. Creative levels, charming characters, a solid story. Would be lying if I said that I enjoyed it all the way, as the beginning was kind of boring. However, once it gets going, it gets going. Hopefully the sequel focuses on the strengths of this game while ironing out all the bullshit. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Help this video out in the algorithm by doing the usual stuff, and until next time.